So I guess the first significant change was going from a completely manual ad hoc process of just people running tools on their desktops and saving the archive websites into a shared network folder into having a workflow system, which is our Pandas system, which kind of controls or guides curators through the process end to end, from capturing websites to describing them with metadata. Back at the start of our web archiving process, we didn't have digital legal deposit legislation, so getting permission from publishers was an important step in the process, and so it guided them through and recorded the response from publishers, whether they said yes, whether they said no, how many times we contacted them, and that sort of thing, and then right through to publishing descriptive metadata about the like a browse path to be able to find websites on a particular topic, whether there were any access restrictions on it. So that was sort of the first big change for us. And then more recently, we have gotten digital legal deposit legislation, which allows the library to collect lots of different types of electronic material, not just websites, but ebooks and really anything that it's got some provisions that allow for policy to add new types of material. And so that has meant that we don't need the permission workflow, at least for Australian material. And that means that we can do broad domain crawls, and that has kind of significantly, we're still rethinking, that was only came in a couple of years ago, and we're still rethinking our workflows in order to be able to sort of take advantage of that and to be able to more efficiently capture more material.
Everything keeps on changing, so changing is a constant. This looks like a made-up sentence, but that's the reality. We don't take anything for granted, so we keep on changing. So technologically, this is my mindset, our mindset. Like, I'm not a librarian, I'm a web guy. So for us, this change is the normal. So we know this is how it is. We don't stick to standards or formats or workflows. We keep on having an open mind that everything is constantly changing. So this is not surprising. What was surprising, maybe, it's the first time that I'm thinking about it, was how hard it is to sell something for free. So you build a service, and it was quite hard. And you have this really, I think, in my opinion, obviously I'm biased, that is really useful, and then people don't use it. But when you show them to people, they say, this is great, it's going to be really handy. But so the dissemination and the training takes so much effort that I never expect that. That would be so hard to give something for free that is useful and that affects everybody's lives in a positive way. And we don't have the resources to do the dissemination that we would like. So we have like a gold mine and nobody goes there. And this is really frustrating. We have been, well, after we noticed this problem, we have been pushing it to solve it. But it was a surprise for me, because in our naive engineer minds, we thought that we were going to do a very interesting service and everybody would start using it. And that's not the reality at all.
The newest thing, I think, was the appearance of social networks. So since 2009, the fact that you were archiving today, Twitter, for example, it had nothing to do with the websites we collected till now. So that's the newest thing.
When I started about 1.5 years ago, right around that time, we were just beginning to add catalog records for individual website seeds into our SearchWorks catalog. And that was mostly due to a grant-based project that had a specific deadline. And so we had this group of websites. They were all described really well. So we thought, let's get this into the catalog. And since then, we've tried to steadily add more and more. So I think that's a pretty big step to make them discoverable to our research community.
As we signed an agreement with an important public entity in Spain in charge of digital agenda with Europe, and which is red.es. We from the beginning we started contracting with Internet Archive, our first domain crawls, by around four years, and then thanks to red.es, an agreement we signed with them, we could we managed to make grow our web archive, not only with human resources but also with infrastructure. And then we were able to web archive with our own resources, installing our own tools and working with that. So it's now growing.
Honestly, I think it's just kind of the professionalization of what we do. And when we started, when I started in 2004, I had no idea what I was doing. And so it was just like a Wild West in my mind. And as we just tried a bunch of things. We came across, we had already known about the Internet Archive, but we started to come across the tools that they were using. We were introduced to the ARC format. I think when we joined IIPC, then suddenly, we had a group of peers who were doing the same things. We could ask questions. We could be part of training. We could understand that there's a small suite of tools that we can use. And it really moved us from what was kind of a haphazard, we got what we got, to we can actually say what we're missing, or we can measure this and talk about these collections in a more robust way. I think we're still a long ways from being able to communicate what we do and our collections to our users in a reasonable way. But I think at least within those of us that are doing the web archiving, we have a much better sense of this is how you do this. And the areas where we can also recognize where we're deficient. So we can say, we need to work on this. We need to plan to do this thing. So for us, it's we're still not doing well with full text search, and even doing any more of the larger scale data extractions for reuse. Those are areas we know we can improve.
I think the biggest challenge is adapting to changing technology. And I think that's going to continue to be a problem for the foreseeable future. The new web standards that are being developed quite rapidly, it's something we're struggling to keep up with. And the new ways of developing applications that are far more interactive. Well, in fact, I use the word application rather than website there, because that's the way things are moving. We're talking about applications that users interact with rather than static websites and static material that is more sort of a published thing. And just how we cope with that is a real struggle.
You spoke about QA, which is a challenge, of course, and we still have to work on it. A first question we had asked before was the issue of completeness, of the guarantee that we have everything that could exist on internet, but we know already that this is not possible. So we make a kind of sample and we document the sample to explain how it was made. But we think that today the most challenging thing is the coherency between all these kind of objects, since I already said we had television, radio, then websites, and then social networks, and then radio, stream radios. They are very different objects, but we have to find how to put them as linked objects all together. And that's really the question today. We are thinking about the methodology that makes possible a common curation for all these kind of objects. We don't have the same shape, the same frame, but they speak about the same society.
One thing I faced kind of getting into all this and learning about it, there's so many, it's so complex and there's so many issues and so many different facets of just understanding how websites behave. Because on a daily basis, our interaction with the internet and websites it's so kind of easy and fluid and simple, and we deal with it all the time, but we don't necessarily think about how it all works. And then when archiving it all comes into play, all of those technical processes are surfaced and we realize how crazy it is. So I think kind of learning all of that takes time. Like I had to do a lot of reading. I read so much literature to see what all the challenges are from different perspectives, from the people capturing the content to the user end, the researcher.
I think there are several big challenges for web archiving. One of the most important, I think most of our colleagues pointed at, is the development of collaborative tools that we can share as a community and that can make easier the development of these web archives. We also need to crawl and preserve and provide access easier to these kind of different formats that are not easy to crawl, like videos or social media, that are very important today. And there are some other formats that are difficult to crawl and to provide access to them. And basically, I think is these two important things.
Part of it's just the scale. It can be really daunting, just knowing kind of what is out there that we could collect is kind of like, oh no. But from there, like once you start to think, okay, well, what are the scope of what we collect at my institution? Where can we actually use web archiving to make good collection decisions? I think it starts to come into something more tractable that you can deal with. We do run into challenges with the greater web archiving community with, we have some fairly complicated tools that have, in the greater scheme of things, a fairly small user base, and making sure that those tools are maintained, and not only just maintained, but move forward with the changes that we need to see them, is a challenge. And there just really are, there are dozens of people that are qualified to work on these in the world, which is a horrible thing to say about some like absolutely core infrastructure that we work with. And so like the Heritrix software package, the Open Wayback package is, you know, they're important, and making sure that they still live up to the expectations we have for them, that they're still meeting our needs, and that they're moved forward not only in a maintenance capacity, but in a way that we can continue to rely on them to do what is a really important activity in our libraries.
It's probably not to get stuck with the overwhelming scope of the job of archiving the web, because doing everything in a perfect way all the time is not possible. We will always run behind the changes on the web, and therefore not to get stuck on trying to grab the big picture, but maybe to see smaller areas where you can focus on and start from there, and try to find certain subjects and areas of interest where you can start with smaller projects and do those really well, try to present those to the audience, and then get participation in from that way. That's, I think, the track that we want to go on and continue over the next years. Yeah.
I mean, I totally agree with what Ben said. But from a technical point of view, I think we're really at a crossroads where the web is becoming less open, and big platforms are implementing their own walled gardens more and more, and people are, experimenting, it's now old, new HTML tags where it's like everything is interactive, and the standard crawlers are not working anymore on a lot of new sites, and even the second generation crawlers will not work if the page requires interactivity. And there's a lot of customization towards individual audiences, be it geographical or language-based or things like this. And that is something that is really hard to capture, if not impossible. And so the thing is, I think from a technical point of view, we're leaving the era where where the web was something equivalent to print in a sort of way, like there was something which was being published to everyone, and now it's not anymore. And I think that is going to be a huge challenge on how we approach this as organizations.
I think also a big challenge that we face as individual institutions, but also as members of the IIPC, is to raise the awareness for the necessity of web archiving in the general public. But I think we could also do more in presenting it as a service to basically everyone who uses the web, everyone who has ever created a website. So not only to show like a lot of time has passed where we lost a lot, where we are running behind, but so that it is necessary to pick up the pace, but also to show that yes, it's something that anyone can benefit from, and maybe that could help in bringing down some of the walls that are being built right now. Yeah.
I think we can break those aims down into two areas. We've got the technical improvements we'd like to make, and then the kind of structural improvements we'd like to make. So on the technical side, we would like to be able to improve our tooling in order to be able to capture particularly platform and social media material and video and multimedia material. So we would like to be able to integrate tools like Browser and Heritrix into our workflows so that all of our curators can make use of them. At the moment, we're sort of doing them in an ad hoc, mostly manual process. And then on the process side, we're currently in the process of rethinking how our collaborative program with our state library works. We don't as yet, that process is only just beginning, so I can't share what are the goals or the changes we're going to make there because they haven't been decided on, but I suspect there's going to be a big rethink there of how that works to take into account things like digital legal deposit, which some of the state libraries now have as well as the National Library having. So we really need to rethink how that all works and how the most effective way we can sort of share our resources.
So we're trying to improve image search, and we like to migrate the full text search component to Solar, because the software that we developed finished developing like in 2010. It still works, so it's quite good. But well, time degrades, and there are libraries that disappear, and at this moment it has a very high cost of maintenance. So we really must put some effort on migrating to Solar in a way that can be collaboratively maintained, not just by us. So these are two technical challenges that we really must address in the short notice. We also like to make our interfaces responsive, because this also reduces our maintenance costs, because at this moment we have a mobile version and a desktop version. And this looked like a good idea in the beginning, developing, but then maintaining is a headache, sorry. So basically the message is, they like to say, like, it's really quite easy to develop something. The hard part is to keep it running. It's really hard work. So from a technical perspective, this is how we want to go. And probably will not solve this in the following year, maybe in 5 years' time, and disseminate. So we want that everyone in Portugal at least knows our service. And we are very far from that, but that is our target.
Well, for the next year, we want to continue acquisition, and we want to develop the service of collection on Facebook and maybe on Instagram as well. And it's quite difficult to say what we'll do in 2025, since internet is moving so fast that we have only a projection for the 12 next months, but I wouldn't say later.
We need to grow. We need to consolidate our relations with other libraries and to get more collaboration around Spain around the network of libraries, not only regional, but also university and local libraries, because they have more information about where the cultural heritage of these geographical areas is. And so we have to make bigger this network. And we also have to expand the idea of this important task for all of us, for the whole country, and get more resources.
One of the things we're working on right now is because of the very technical specifics about the way that YouTube and Vimeo get crawled, it ends up being a really almost laughably poor user experience when a user gets to a web page that has a YouTube video on it, and they're almost never going to get to that content to play it back. And so we're working on some tools to help us connect YouTube players with the content that was actually captured through YouTube DL. And so connecting those is something that we're currently working on. I would like to have a much better, the next time I get asked how big is your collection, how many of this you have, I do want a better inventory of what we have. We've been collecting stuff. We have a rough count, but I'd really like to be able to have more specifics about the size and shape of our collections, not just gigabytes or terabytes and URLs, but like what kinds of things, how many domains do we have, what's the scope of these collections. And then looking 5 years, I really want us to have full text search. It's been way too long that we haven't. Our collections are large, but they're not unreasonable to do full text search for an institution like us now. It's just kind of balancing that marginal time that we have with our the other things, because we have the whole digital library to worry about, and web archiving is an important but piece of that. So 5 years is to have a search interface that we're proud to show our users and say this is a way. And then I would really love to have some of our faculty who are really high users of our web archives. We have a few that have kind of dipped their toe into the web archive, but I'd really love to be able to have some really strong use cases for our faculty or our students using our web archives, so that it's no longer just in case. It's like, no, they're using them now.
The immediate future, it's going to be the access. I mean, that's the first part we're working on. The second part we're working on already a little bit, but we really want to do next year as well, is researcher access, because we have close ties to the University of Luxembourg, and they have been running a winter school this year about digital methods and also web archives. And in the future, they want to expand that. They want to also have a master's thesis, maybe PhD thesis using web archives. And we definitely want to be involved in that. And then also starting next year, we want to expand our own harvesting infrastructure so that in 5 years, we would be in a place where we can offer the whole services. So like from harvesting to preservation and researcher access.